Hi, it's Mark here, back again with another video. This time I'm going to be talking about how I installed an Android tablet into my MGB's original centre console. A little disclaimer before we start. I'm not suggesting that this is the best way to do this, or even suggesting that you have to do it at all. The original centre console is quite attractive, it's period and fits in with the car very nicely. So whether you've got the original speaker there, or if you've got like a radio blanking plate and some switch gear, looks very nice. My centre console was slightly damaged. You can see maybe here that there's a chip taken out of this bit, and also here it's slightly chipped, and also my speaker surround and mesh were damaged, so it wasn't too bad from far away, but close up I didn't really sort of bear close inspection and wanted to do something about it. And the other reason why I thought it would be good to do is because I quite like the James Bond DB5 centre console, which turned into a sort of primitive sort of sat-nav tracking device, and I thought it would be quite cool to have something that mimicked that in the car. The kind of things that you can do would probably be to either fit a tablet like I've done, or even fit some sort of double DIN radio, but I think it does depend primarily on how far you're willing to modify your car. Certainly on the earlier cars such as mine, behind the speaker grille that would have been here, there's metalwork actually quite close behind it, and only like a small hole to be able to fit anything, so a slim tablet fits rather well. But I think on the later cars there's actually a slightly bigger space behind there to be able to fit a radio or something like that. But then you've also got switchgear which should be mounted on the centre console, so you may have to consider relocating those. The first thing that I did was to remove this from the car and remove the original speaker itself and the chrome surround and mesh that was fitted to the centre console. And once you have these removed, you can kind of see how much space you've got to play with. Particularly on the back, you can see kind of how big a device might be able to fit between the two sides because there is actually a gap either side which you can't actually use to mount anything onto, so it kind of goes in, so you're restricted a little bit there, but also you have to consider what sort of aperture you want to have on the front here. So I've tried to mimic the original grille shape by having this sort of octagon shape, and being an MG, I thought it was quite nice to have the octagon there because of its presence in the MG logo. Okay, so a bit of a elongated octagon with only a little bit cut out the side because I didn't want to encroach on the screen space. But I've sort of sacrificed having some black bars at the edges actually when the screen's turned on, just in order to have this. I think it makes it look a little bit more original equipment, having this slightly nice shape here, but a square shape would work just as well. So from there I could consider what type of device I'd like to fit. So I had the measurements of sort of the maximum size and the sort of size screen that I wanted, and the tablet that I chose was a Nexus 7 from 2013. That's actually quite old now, and devices have come on quite a lot since then in terms of the processors, the memory, etc. But I didn't actually want it to do a whole lot, so basic sat nav, play some songs, maybe some video, and that's about it. But I do understand that this is quite a dated thing already. The thing is about having this size tablet is that around then these sort of mini tablets were quite popular, and they seem to have fallen out of favour a little bit since then. So people are going for larger phones now rather than a smaller tablet, and actually tablets seem to be on the bigger side of the iPad Pro, etc. So a slightly larger phone could be an option, or even a separate screen and maybe a mini PC or Raspberry Pi or something like that could work. But yeah, I went for a tablet because it was cheap, because it was 5-year-old tech when I did it, or 4-year-old tech or something, and it's quite self-sufficient, so I didn't need to mount a mini PC somewhere else or anything. So once you have your device, you can then start marking out where you might like to cut the hole or enlarge the hole that's there already on the centre console itself. I did offer up the tablet several times just to make sure I was doing the right thing. There's that old saying is measure twice, cut once. And I used a Dremel type tool once I had marked out the outline of where I thought the screen would go. One note about this particular type of plastic is when you're cutting it, it does crumble and seems quite fibrous actually. It makes a hell of a mess. And it left me with quite an untidy line once I'd cut it that I needed to file down. And this plastic really did just clog the file really, really badly, and I had to keep sort of clearing it with a wire brush to keep it clear and actually make it continuously effective. And that really made me think about what sort of edging material I wanted, because the edge of the plastic that I had filed down wasn't completely smooth. If I'd spent a lot more time on it, perhaps I could have got it a bit better, but because I'd opted for this octagon shape, it was quite tricky to get the thing smooth, but also try and keep the angle of the octagon with the size file that I had. And it would just, no matter how hard I tried, I would file it, and then I'd kind of go file it a bit too much, and I was very conscious that because I'd carefully drawn out where the screen would go, I didn't actually want to make the hole bigger than I'd originally intended. So that kind of got me thinking about the edging, and how, depending on how you place the edging, you could actually mask some untidy cutting by putting it slightly in from where you've filed the plastic down. And that's kind of what I did. I originally sort of started with quite a thick edging, and that was good for hiding things, but it looked terrible. So I then sort of reduced the size of this chrome trim down by about half. I think it's about 4mm chrome trim, whereas previously I had 6, and that just looked a bit ungainly. It might even be 3mm, I will check that. So once you have your hole there, and you've considered the sort of shape of it and the sort of trim you're going to have, it's sort of time to try and fit the tablet itself. So I kind of offered up the tablet to the hole I'd made, and I placed sort of auto mounting foam tape, sort of that 3M stuff that you can find online. That's sort of reasonably soft, just to sort of protect the device from screwing it to the plastic front there, and also to try and take out any sort of imperfections in the shape of the plastic, so it wouldn't sort of dig into the glass as I tightened it and crack it or anything. And it seemed to work quite well. So the foam tape itself won't hold it to the plastic console, but what it does is these sort of picture or frame mounting brackets. They're kind of a corner shape, and I've just used a single self-tapping screw for each one to secure it to the back. Now you can see that I've only got 3 here, and that is because the on-off button and volume controls are at the top here, and I didn't want to obscure those because I haven't actually found a good way of being able to turn the device on and off after it's been completely run out of battery. So I do have a way of turning on the device from standby, from turning on the car, but when it's completely dead, I have to just kind of pull this out and press the on button. And it's easy to do. I don't actually screw it back into the car properly, because there's no point, because it fits quite snugly anyway, and if I have to keep taking it out, it's just gonna annoy me. So I just sort of pull it out, press it on, push it back in again, and that seems to be all right. And that's effectively it. The next sort of thing to note is on the device that I've put in here, this Nexus 7 from 2013. There really is not much room either side of the tablet for any sort of cabling or anything like that, and that was a bit of a problem for me, because the charger goes in the bottom here, and there's not really much of a gap to fit a charging cable. My Nexus 7 tablet actually had a very temperamental charging port. I think it's a common issue with these, and then it was sort of a cheap second-hand one that I got. But luckily you can get these reasonably cheap now, which is the Nexus wireless charging station, and because it's magnetic it just clips onto the back, and then there is loads of space here for the USB cable to attach and then put it to some sort of power supply. So in the car I have rigged a 12 volt power supply from a kill switch that I have underneath the dash. So the kill switch itself does actually control whether the ignition can be turned on or not, but it also can be turned on without the ignition being on. And the reason for having that is it's an extra sort of theft prevention device. If someone's trying to start your car, it's quite hard to find this switch under the dashboard. But also it means I can turn this on while the car is off, and it will sort of keep charging the tablet if I'm parked for a short amount of time and it's really low on battery. So that was just an eBay purchase. It was just sort of some wires coming off that. The kill switch is already there in the car, and it was just rigging up a sort of 12 volt cigarette lighter type socket, and then you can buy these inserts that go in which have a couple of USB ports on them, and that's what I use to charge the tablet. And I only needed one port, but there's a second one there which is quite handy for if you wanted to, say, charge your phone or something like that. I had originally intended to connect this to a small amplifier that was in the glove box, but the amp was really cheap and not that great. But also, once I had the amp in there, I didn't know where to put the speakers, so people kind of cut holes in their door cards. I didn't really want to do that. I quite like the look of the door cards without speakers. People made custom sound boxes for them, or make holes in various various places in the car for speakers and whatnot. I was just becoming increasingly frustrated with where I could put some speakers. I've got some somewhere that I could put in there, but just didn't really find the correct place to mount them. So in the end, I ditched the idea of the amplifier in the glove box, and I've actually gone for a Bluetooth speaker. So it's the Ultimate Ears Boom 2 or something like that I've got, which is quite loud for a Bluetooth speaker. It's not the best audio quality. You could probably get something better, like a Bose a portable speaker, or if you've got speakers in your car already, then perfect. You can just go with an amp or something like that. But I find that the sort of speaker that this Ultimate Ears Boom speaker is really good, because you can just put it on a threaded tripod mount, which it's got like a hole in the bottom for, and then you can clamp that using like some camera equipment, sort of clamping things, to screw it to the rail that runs underneath the dashboard, and that means it's completely returned to standardable. So you can just take that off if you wanted to, and even because my center console was damaged anyway, I don't really feel too bad about cutting it up. But you could even have a spare one that would just slot back in place, and you wouldn't know any wiser that this car had been modified to have it, which I think is quite nice, because you can always return it back to stock. I mean, obviously if you cut metal behind a dash, it's a little bit more involved, but you can still achieve the same stock look by putting the like a replacement center console in there, so that's no problem. So that's pretty much it for how I got it in the car and how it's powered and the audio side of things. The next bit really is how I control turning it on from it being on standby. So I've already mentioned how I turn it on from it being completely off, or the battery's dead and it needed to be charged up. But if it's just on standby mode, I use this software called Automate. There's probably other software out there. Again, I'm not suggesting this is the best way you should do it, but it's just something that I found seems to work. And Automate has like a satellite navigation link to Google Maps, and it's got a music player in there, and it's got a sort of nice front screen which has the weather and sort of some news feed or whatever. And the clever thing about it is that when it detects that the device is being charged, i.e. the ignition is on, from standby with the screen off, it can load up and load your favourite page within the Automate app itself. So whether that's coming back to the last page that you're on, which might be, say, satellite navigation, or always going to the front page with the weather, that might be a nice thing to do. And likewise, when it detects that the charge has gone from the device, so it's not charging anymore, and so for example, if your ignition's turned off or my kill switch is down or whatever, it will then close the app and the screen will go blank, so back into standby mode. So there you're using sort of minimal power. So if you use it as a daily driver or at least a few times a week, then your tablet will just be constantly on standby, and every time you use it will charge up a bit, and then you turn it off and then it'll be in standby, then it'll charge up a bit. I don't tend to use my car as much as that, so I tend to just turn it off completely, and then turn it on again when I use the car. And in fact, funnily enough, even though I use this Automate app for the clever sort of turning on, turning off side of things, that's not the app I use most of the time. I mean, in my previous video I mentioned how my ignition, my electronic ignition has its own app, its own Android app and iOS. That means you can see a digital dashboard, and that is what I use for a lot of the time. Mainly because it looks quite cool having sort of the dials down there sort of discreetly, and because my gauges are incorrect, so an accurate rev counter and a speedometer. I'm not sure how accurate the speedometer is. It seemed to be quite accurate. When I drove to Bicester the other week on the motorway, it seemed to be recording the right speed, but it does really vary depending on sort of the amount of satellites it's been able to lock onto. So if you're in a built up area, it doesn't seem to work as well, but certainly on the motorway it seemed to keep quite accurate speed readout there, and as I was sort of keeping up with traffic, it kind of made sense, unless everybody else was sort of speeding around me and I was doing sort of 80 or something when it was showing me 60 on there. It could have been, I have no idea. But that is about it. I think it's really cool, and if you're like me and you like the sort of James Bond gadgets, then it's really simple to do, and yeah, go for it. But if not, well, that's your choice, and you can enjoy your standard look, and I enjoyed that too. So yeah, good for you. So that's it, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Cheers, bye.